Welcome to the Hay Kings podcast, brought to you by Vermeer, your expert in hay and forage equipment. Today on the Hay Kings podcast, I'm joined by Jeff Essary. Jeff farms near Taos, New Mexico. His county is a bit of a dairy mecca with 58,000 cows and an average milking herd size of 2,400 head. So he's in big dairy country. Jeff farms about 1,500 acres of hay grazer and custom farms a little bit of alfalfa and millet. Jeff is also a published author and YouTuber. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me about your operation from the beginning.
Well, I grew up here on the high plains of eastern New Mexico, what I like to call West Texas. Grew up here on a milo and wheat farm, and that's all. I don't have any brothers. I have one sister. I thought that's what I kind of wanted to do, but then things changed here in eastern New Mexico with the depletion of water and such, and then the falling wheat prices and this and that. I started in hay in 1996 with my uncle, working with my uncle. Then I just fell in love with the hay industry. The hay, we got to bale hay at night here, and I liked how it all come together. And I'm cutting hay and raking hay and baling hay, and so I started in 1996 for him. And then after he left and went to Arizona, I got a first-time farmer guarantee loan and I had a '79 Model Ford pickup. Me and my wife, and that's all we had was a dream, and we started from there.
What did it look like in those early days? Maybe the size of the operation, the workload, the equipment?
I started out in little squares the first year, and I started baling green wheat, which what I mean by green wheat is we cut it in the boot stage when it's still green, and then we bale that up, and horse people and ranchers and dairies love it. But anyway, we started baling little bales. We found out, rather quickly that was a lot of work. And, my uncle he was one of the first ones to bring a 4,800 big square baler Heston to this country. And so I traded my 575 New Holland little square baler for two old 4,800 square balers. And I took them all apart and I put them all together. And then I started farming there. And I started farming alfalfa. We have a lot of dairies in my area, and they range from anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 cow dairies. And so we got a real high demand for forage and hay. And so I started raising alfalfa. We had one circle, and I started raising alfalfa and then baling sorghum sudan grass, which I call hay grazer. And I started baling that, for all the dairies. And we depleted water here. When I was a kid, we had 800, 1,200 gallon a minute wells. And it was only 195 foot deep. And so everybody in the world was pumping like crazy. They're raising peanuts to alfalfa to corn to everything else. And then as I've become an adult, we started depleting our water. And now some places can't even get drinking water for their homes. And so it's kind of depleted down to where all these dairies are still here and they're needing forage. And I started raising alfalfa, and it just slowly kind of trickled into doing more and more hay grazer type hay. I farm 1,500 acres here, in eastern New Mexico, and it all goes to hay grazer hay. I started out doing 100% for the dairies and a little bit for the rancher, but mainly all dairy hay. Anywhere from hay grazer to alfalfa to millet to whatever I could get to bale. I do a lot of custom work on top of that. So for dairies and for other farmers that just wanting to get hay their product. And after a while, I started building a great clientele doing that, these dairies here and ranchers. And it just I got into where good business for me. And then when I went into strictly hay grazer, when we run out of water, the rest is history. We just started doing, all hay grazer and then all big squares. In 2018, I bought my first round baler. I grew up with little bales all my life, and then, and big bales around with my uncle. And I had big balers. Throughout most of my life. And then in 18, I bought my first Massey Ferguson round baler. Quickly learned that I don't know nothing about round baling hay. It's just a totally different to me, the aspect of hay baling. The moisture of the hay and all. And I started selling to ranchers. All these years I've had ranchers just ask me for hay. But they want me to do it in round bales. And I told them that I just don't do round bales. Finally, I just said, well, I'm going to. And the dairy market kind of crashed here in about the late 2000s, and it kind of made it hard to get rid of some hay grazers sometimes. So I just said, well, I'll go ahead and go into round bales. And I started selling to ranchers like crazy, and it's just kind of boomed into do both now. I do round bales, and I do these big squares to the dairy. And I probably sell about 2/3 to the dairy market still, and that's nice because I usually sell it to one family dairy, and they take it all. And I'm talking, about anywhere from 4,000 to 6,000 bales a year. And then I have the ranchers and goat farmers and sheep people and all that buy one bale a week to 500 bales. And I really like selling to those people, and I really like selling to the dairies. So I kind of got the best of both worlds.
That market diversity gives you some flexibility.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. And you know what? The ranchers always need hay in bad times, and the dairies do too. But the dairies, they have standing cattle in their lots, so they have to feed them regardless. But, some of these ranchers really have a need sometimes, and I really like all my customers. And it really has changed our business to where both markets enjoy it. We have our kids here too, and some of them have graduated college. Still got our 2 sons here, and they help out. But we have had no hired hands throughout the 25 years I've been farming. And we pretty well do it all. I mean, I do all the hay cutting, the hay baling. And my wife rakes hay, and she stacks hay, and she sells those 1 bale, 5 bales hay. Every time we have a customer or a need, that's how we always roll with it. My hay season starts in October, which everybody else is about done.
Yeah, say that again.
Yeah.
The latest I've ever put up hay was this year, the first week in October.
Oh, wow. Most people with like their alfalfa and stuff, they're all done. You get about first frost. And here, we get about the middle of October, is when it freezes. It's supposed to around here. Our first freeze. I'm just kind of starting about the 1st of October, and I'll cut all 1,500 acres. I have some custom work I'll cut, and then I'm done by December. So I'll bale 4,000 to 6,000 bales in about a 3-month period. So that's a lot of nights because we bale at night here.
I don't do very much alfalfa, but it's really bad when you have to bale the alfalfa at night and you got the very end of your first cutting Timothy mashing up against your second cutting alfalfa, and oh my gosh.
Yes, that's used to be with our first cutting of alfalfa in May. We usually right at the tail end or right in the middle of our wheat hay, and you've got to stop that. And customers don't understand that, but you can stop doing the wheat hay, go cut your alfalfa, or you'll get off your 28-day cycle. And they just don't understand that that comes first. That's what has to be done. So, but I don't do that anymore. We run out of water here. You're all strictly, just all, not irrigated or dry land. We do have some patches of water here and there, and there's a couple that still try to raise alfalfa and corn. But the dairies, everything here feeds the dairy, and we used to raise a lot of peanuts here and a lot of other type of crops. But anymore, it's all to feed these dairy, and that's what I've been 100% from day one. It's just feeding dairies, and we got a lot of real customers here. It's been my success.
Take me through this transition on the water side. You were saying that the water wasn't very deep and you had basically as much as you could pump. When did it start going away, and what was that progression like switching away from alfalfa to hay grazer?
Well, I usually be all done with my alfalfa, and I'd go right into hay grazer, and the alfalfa used to pay my expenses for my non-irrigated. And then that way my dryland was 100% profit after that. That's the way it used to work when we had water. Back in the early 70s, when my dad started developing his water, they told him he'd have like a 20-year water here. And everybody in the world they didn't understand that. We have 800 to 1,200 gallon a minute wells, just one well per pivot, 120 acre pivots. And and everybody in the world had over impact heads, and and natural gas was cheap, and everybody just pumped. And as the years went by, everybody started adding another well and having to idle back their engines to squeeze them down. And then by 1990, you've seen a lot of it just start drying up. My dad put in his irrigation in the early 70s, and it hadn't been watering since 1992. I believe is the last time those sprinklers ran. It just went into 100% a dryland, non-irrigation country. And, the dairies that moved in here in the late 80s, we've always had little dairies, but the California dairies that moved in here, and it really made a real boom of farming industry here. Everything in the world went to the dairies, and just a great time, really. As our water, those dairies had to go up to Colorado more, and go into Kansas to go get alfalfa to bring it in here, and just go farther areas. And they actually learned how to feed a cheaper feed for their filler and for their heifers and their dry cows, they turn to hay grazer. And I've got dairymen that are using hay grazer as their filler for their dairy ration, and then they add all the other stuff to it.
Let's take a break there and we'll get a word from our sponsor.
I'm Danny Wan, and I switched to the Vermeer 604R because I believe this baler is built to last. I bale about 4,000 bales a year, and I think as much money you give for a baler, they need to bale 4,000 bales a year, even if it's for 10 years, they need to get it done. The day I ran it, we absolutely had no issues at all. It fired up, and I baled like some guy. It just baled all day long.
Hear the full story at makinghay.com/haykings.
What kind of nutrient density are we talking about on hay grazer? I'm a northern guy. I farm in South Canada. I'm only about 40 miles from the border. I'm a cool season guy, and I don't know anything about that.
Well, hay grazer's more like, I call it the bread in the sandwich. It's like probably 8 to 10% of protein, but it's a lot of carbohydrates. It's really just the base. It's just a real good cattle feed. It fills them up. It's a filler. But you got to add back the corn solids, the distiller's grain, the canola and all that stuff into their ration to bring back up the protein and all. So they can do this on a cheaper feed, hay grazer. And of course, they still use alfalfa also, but they used to just strictly use alfalfa. It was hard to sell hay grazer at one time, and now some of that's all they'll use is hay grazer, alfalfa, and little wheat, and they kind of have learned to diversify. We get about 14 to 16 inches annually of rainfall a year, but this last year we only got 2 inches after planting season, and it's just been,
whoa,
yeah, it really has fall off this last year. So I didn't get much baling time this last year, and it's been kind of hard. We've had droughts before. We had one in 2011 and 2012 that we only got 2.5 inches together in both years combined. It really has made the dairies think out of the box when it comes to their feed. I built a lot of CRP love grass back in the days to give them some kind of filler, and they really learned that they don't have to have, I think, 100% alfalfa and all this hard to raise, high price feed to cheapen up their ration, and that's all we're for, is to make our inputs lower. And hopefully it don't hurt our top end. You don't want to do that. So it really has made our hay grazer industry here on our non-irrigated crops. It's kind of helped it out a lot if we can grow them.
I'm still amazed that you can grow any kind of crop on that rainfall.
We're pretty lucky here. I mean, I do full tillage here on my farm, and a lot of people give me a lot of static for that. But we're so warm in the season, and I say that after coming off of a -4 below zero low the other night, but we don't get cold enough, and we're not wet enough, really, I think, for no-till to work in this country. I mean, it's been tried before, and it just doesn't work. We have usually we have a clay bottom and sandy loam top, and it's kind of like a container. And when and when we break it up, and we usually get our rains in flash floods, so we usually fill up the container with that. If we get it all nice and loose, and that way it will store moisture over the summer. And then I usually don't plant until July 4th. And I usually get one cut in a hay grazer, and it's like a 90-day crop. So about October 1st, it's starting to boot out, so we start cutting it. And it's actually using that old moisture on top of the new moisture to work. Last year, I broke a moldboard plow. 850 acres last year, and put 10 tons of barnyard manure on it, thinking it was going to have a good year. And we only had inches for the year. I actually got this to store some of that early moisture that I broke on, because we had a very wet winter last winter, and then it just turned off, and it's like a faucet. That's just what you learn farming here. I mean, it's happened to us before, and you got to take the punches. Like my dad always said, it's your country, and we're always looking for next year. And if you're ready for it, we'll float it to the next year and hope for the best. And I'm hoping that 2021 is better than 2020 has been.
You said you were putting on 10 tons of manure. You're able to haul manure back from the dairies and apply it?
Yes, our dairies, for the most part, are looking for an outsource for that somewhere else for it to go. I mean, so a lot of times, if you're close enough, which I mean, I'm within 6 miles of 4 big dairies, so that they usually They haul it to you for free. Now I got to pay for the spreading, but yeah, and we just apply that onto our land, and then I'll moldboard with that under. About every 5 years, I like to do that.
Keeps organic matter in there and all sorts of good things.
All sorts of good things. And then, we try to spread other fertilizer, like urea and stuff like that in between those years. Like I tell a lot of the dairymen, and some of them don't believe me, but we're all partners in this we're dealt with. I raise their hay. They provide me with milk and cheese, and we feed the world. So we're all part of this big, happy family. And I've got to make sure they stay alive, and they got to make sure I stay alive.
You are of some fame besides farming here. You're an author. You wrote a book called?
Yeah, I've written two of them. Matter of fact, I've written the first one was The Republic. The second one was Off the Deck. And it's just a hobby. I try to write still today. Usually it's all in the wintertime. I'm just kind of self-published out there, and no big deal, just kind of dabble in it. I've got a story to tell, and the first one's about Texas seceding from the Union. Some people say that really could happen. That it's really getting close, and I'm like, well, I hope my book don't come true. But but then again, it sure could be, and I wrote it to wake people up. And I've sold quite a few books. I wrote that in 2013, I believe it was. I had it on Amazon for a long time, so I don't have it on there anymore, but I still sell them from time to time.
I wanted to ask you about your YouTube channel, too. How'd you get started on that?
I've had a channel for several years. I put a few things on there, and my son, he's 18 now, and he kept on pushing me. He said, Dad, I watch all these big farming guys, the Wilker Farms and the Millennial Farmer, and they watch some of the other guys. And they're like, Dad, you can do that. That's stuff that you do all the time. And I was like, well, yeah, I could. So I just kind of started about almost a year ago. I just started, I bought me a GoPro camera, and I just started playing around, and I started watching those guys and seeing how they do it. And Bell's Hay down there in Arizona, he has one also. And I just kind of started watching those guys and uploading videos. And my son said, "Why don't you do 2 a week? That's the way they do it." And I was like, "Well, okay. Well, I'll try to do it." And I started editing, and I get better as it goes. But people are intrigued by it, and you can find these things from shop builds. I just had I'm just finishing up on a bed build that I'm building for one of my old trucks. I rebuilt a 4590 inline Heston baler a couple of winters ago on there. I completely tore it down and rebuilt it. That one there was pretty popular. I do harvest and tillage, and even play some golf on there, which I'm no good at golf. But but we do it all, and just kind of what we're up to on the farm. And I do it for several reasons. Educate people. Of what we do. There's a lot of people that don't know what farming is all about. They think we just sit here and gather up government money. That's how it is. It's just a job like everybody else's, but it's a job we love. And I might be a welder one day, I might be a tractor driver the next, or I might be a carpenter. It's good to educate. It documents my history. I don't have any grandkids as of yet. One of these days, my grandkids could look back on what I do and see what Pa did for a living, and what their roots come from. It's just like authoring a book. It's just something that I'm enjoying.
Do you have any lessons or advice for YouTubing?
Just be truthful. Me, myself, I try to be just as honest and transparent as I can be. I'm trying not to be fake at all. It's just what we do every day. I've got an Instagram too, and I do quite a few stories on there. And it's just, and Snapchat. It's just off the cuff. Just, this is what I'm doing today, and I might time lapse some stuff. Be yourself. Upload videos often, from the smallest 5-minute videos. I wouldn't go over 15 to 20 minutes. It seems like people just lose their attention, after so long. If I get one person that watches it, I'm happy. I'm educating.
You're talking about your boys here. What's your view on them coming back to the farm, or staying on the farm, coming back to the farm? Take me through your thought process on that.
Well, I've got 2 older girls, and they're all out of college, and one of them is an ag grad. She does ag communication, so she's involved in ag, and I'm proud of that. And my other daughter, she works for a college. She's not in ag, but my oldest boy is not really into the agricultural field very much. He's more into computers. But my youngest son, he's 15, and he helps me in the shop every day. He helps me with loaders, and he doesn't load hay very often, but he's getting to the point where he's wanting to, and he's wanting to plow a lot more. I see him helping me a lot. I don't know what he's going to do after college. I mean, I always tell all my kids to get an education first. You can always come back to the farm, and I'm hoping that that's what they do. And I'm hoping that my youngest son is really wanting to explore farming, and I'd like to see him do that someday, maybe if he wants to. You got to want to do this for a living, and as you know, John, you don't get rich doing this. It's just a lifestyle, a good place to raise your kids, and that's all it's about. That's all me and my wife are driven to do, is just raise our kids in a good atmosphere.
Thank you, Jeff, for your time. This has been a great conversation. I think a lot of folks are going to learn quite a bit about your dry region and farming in such a dairy-heavy area. Very interesting.
Well, thank you, John Paul. I appreciate you having me on. I enjoy the podcast and listening to them all. They're great.